share that. So one of the questions earlier was about intention. It was implicitly about intention. It was about creativity and whether there's specific meditations for creativity that I do personally. Um, I always sit with an intention that's really about um, easing suffering and for myself, others, and that um, and I wanted to speak more about intention as well as sort of a boot up sequence. So I'll talk about that in a moment. I see a question here about trying it but never seems to work. Can you be more specific? I'm not sure what you were referring to there. I'll come back to you if you're able to answer that. So with intention. So first off, why intention? Intention is useful because the act of meditation is an act of attention. It's an act of deliberately bringing our attention to something that we deem important. And while when you first start to sit, it can seem like obvious, okay, well, I'm doing this meditation thing. Why would I need to explicitly think about intention? But like anything else, like any other activity, even meditation can become rote very quickly. And so then you suddenly get into this habit of I'm going to sit down over there and close my eyes and get into the posture, whatever that posture or place is for you. But it turns into this rote activity where maybe your mind is off wandering and you're not actually meditating. So having setting an intention can be a good way to remind yourself of that so that when you notice that your attention has wandered from something, let's say your breath, sometimes the thing that it's wandered to is very alluring. It might be like a juicy problem, or you might be having some fantasy, not in a dirty sense, but just something about like, oh, I'm going to be so good at this thing, and then I'm going to tell these people about this thing that I did, and then everyone's going to like me, or whatever that fantasy is for you. And in that moment, when you don't have a strong intention or a strong top of mind reminder of why you're doing this activity, then it's useful to have something to come back to. Um, and so I just saw your response there about just meditating and trying it, but not seems to work. Doesn't seem to work. So let me come back to that in a moment. And I think I have a couple of videos that might help, but I'm not sure. Let me come back to your comment in a moment. So intention. So when we recognize that our attention is not in the place where we want it to be, it's in that moment that intention can be useful uh, as something to help bring us back, to remind us why we even want to come back. Uh, a lot of times people will do a spiritual activity, whether it's prayer or a meditation or um, something similar, with an intention that sounds like I want this thing to materialize in my life. Maybe I want this piece of my life to work better, or I want something for someone else in my life. And in the particular narrative of the Vipassana, the Goenka Vipassana tradition, in that narrative, having a desire like that, a desire for an outcome, is kind of antithetical to the practice, because the practice is about letting go of our attachments to particular outcomes. And so I think that those kinds of intentions, even if they're altruistic, um, like I hope that my son gets better, or I hope that uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to describe this because it. So whenever you have intentions for a particular outcome, that you are attached to that outcome, and therefore uh, that is going a little against the grain of the practice in Vipassana of, can I be with a particular sensation? Sensation being a physical manifestation of an emotion or a series of thoughts that that are also an emotion. Uh, so can I be with that without needing to hold on to it if it's a pleasant one, or push it away if it's an unpleasant one? So coming back to what I started with of intention and bootstrapping, is I and the question of like, do I do meditations for creativity? So I think doing a meditation for creativity would be to start with an intention that I'm going to be creative, or that certain ideas are going to come to me. Uh, and I personally haven't don't do that, and I personally haven't tried that either. And I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm just saying my personal experience with that. What I do is try to start with this bootstrap sequence that's described in a book called I'm blanking on the name all of a sudden. The Mind Illuminated. Okay, Mind Illuminated. And I'll say that I found that book quite useful in that it lays out things in a pretty structured way. There's controversy around the author and certain allegations and I um, that were leveled in 2019 or so. So I just want to call out that there's some controversy around the author and the contents of that book. And I think there are some very useful frameworks. One of the frameworks that I found very useful is the boot up sequence. The boot up sequence, what I call it, looks something like this, and I'm paraphrasing it and hopefully not messing it up. The way I think about it is start with your highest intention, then a goal, then hold that goal loosely, then figure out what are hindrances that are going to get in your way, then reaffirm your determination, check your posture, and then begin. So let me cover those again. So start with the highest goal. For me, the highest goal, I have this unspoken sort of highest goal of may I reduce suffering to others and myself. And I say unspoken because the more that seems so large and so much larger than anything I can actually grasp. And so the way that actually shows up for me is, may I close the gap between the father I am and the father I aspire to be. Maya, I see. Yes, you can ask questions here. Please go ahead. I'm just rambling on a particular track for the moment, but I'm happy to answer questions. Okay, so my highest goal is sort of, let me close the gap between the father I am and the father I aspire to be. Then my more practical, immediate goal might be something like, okay, yesterday I had a hard time just bringing my attention to my breath. So today I'm really going to focus on the quality and the specificity of my attention to my breath. So that's more of like a, what am I really going to narrow in on today? Then there's holding the goal loosely. So just knowing that, again, that is an aspiration for an outcome. And I just said how that's maybe not an idea that feels congruent with the practice. So kind of using the larger goal and then the more specific goal as a way to orient your ship, but then allowing the wind to take you where it does to a certain extent. Okay. Then the next piece is noting any hindrances. And this is really useful. I find like, okay, I slept poorly last night, or I woke up a little groggy, or I just drank coffee, or whatever. Or maybe I know I'm going to get interrupted by my kids, or I know I have a meeting coming soon. So whatever that is that feels like it's a nagging or a reason why I might not meditate well today. And then immediately countering that with determination. And determination, I find, helps when you have your highest goal kind of in mind. So it's like, okay, and I know this practice is good for me, and I'm going to, in spite of those hindrances, excuse me, I'm redetermining to continue with the practice for this amount of time. Okay, and then finally, uh, determination, and then finally, um, posture. And posture is a nice physical way to just orient yourself. Something about our place and our posture in a place also kind of gives your body a cue that you're about to do this activity. So then just checking your posture, checking that your back is straight, or whatever other cues you use, that can help you